G'day everyone and welcome to Lecture 6 for BMA 703. Today we're going to be talking about creativity in design, and this topic actually flows really neatly out of the previous topic we looked at, which is the process by which organisations identify opportunities. And so there is a degree of overlap between what we're going to be talking about today in terms of how we come about generating ideas and the importance of opportunities in an entrepreneurial context. So the bulk of today's lecture is actually going to be covered in chapter 5 of the recommended text. So I strongly recommend that you have a look at that chapter. And I've also put up a couple of additional references for you that talk a little bit about some of the issues around creativity in design, in particular with an emphasis on the concept of design thinking and the role that design might play in entrepreneurial activities. So there's a really strong link between creativity and the innovation process. And in fact, if you think about our definitions of innovation, what we know is that it really is a process of creatively solving problems, of coming up with new ideas and new concepts that help us to resolve problems that are currently facing us as a business or our customers, and that enable us to create new value for all stakeholders concerned. So creativity is really fundamentally a function of knowledge. It's really about us being able to turn the knowledge that we have into new and different ideas. And it really involves a process of curiosity, imagination and experimentation. Traditionally, when we think about knowledge, we think about it in a very dry context. We think about it as, digesting facts, storing those facts in our brains, and simply being able to regurgitate those facts. And so, knowledge is certainly, that sort of knowledge development is certainly important, but in and of itself, it's not going to lead to creative solutions to problems. What the creative process is all about is really about looking at this knowledge in different ways, or being curious about gaining new knowledge or new answers to problems that we previously thought were answered, or questions that have never had an answer to them before. And certainly when we talk about creativity, we really do talk about the use of our imagination and the process of experimentation, of trialling different things to see if different approaches to problems might work. So being creative really implies doing things differently, that think a bit laterally or outside the box. And if you had a look at that reference I gave you last week that talked about the importance of thinking outside the box and the differences between deductive and inductive thinking and why that was important in the creative process, it'll already be pretty well established in your own minds why this is an important approach to being innovative. And creativity is not just something that's limited to artistic fields. When we tend to use the word creative or creativity, people tend to think about it purely in the realm of artistic expression, painting, drawing, writing, those sorts of things. But really, creativity can be used in all facets of our life, including business. And one of the things that people who want to be good at entrepreneurship need to appreciate is the importance of them continuing to engage with the creative part of their brain, to try and continually think of ways that they can be creative in new and different ways to solve problems for their organisations. And we can have creativity linked through to things like scientific and technological breakthroughs. And creativity really can help us to lead the process of innovation. Okay, so it can drive the innovation process. But there are some differences between creativity and innovation. When we talk about creativity, we do tend to talk about a subjective evaluation of whether something is good or not good, whereas innovation tends to be more grounded and tangible. And so the trick in using creativity in an entrepreneurial context is to move from simply being able to come up with a solution that is creative to a solution that is realistic. Okay, so you start with the creative idea and then pair that back to match the operational realities you face as an organisation. And we need to really think about this link between creativity and ideas. And we talked a little bit about the idea generation process last week and some of the things that organisations might seek to do if they're going to generate and gain new and innovative solutions to problems. And so creativity is really a mind exercise, whether it's the mind of an individual or a team of people working together to come up with solutions. And really what we're focusing on here is the ability to experiment, the freedom within an organisational context to experiment, and to find new ways of us approaching things that appear relatively mundane or relatively simple within organisations, or to approach complex problems that the organisation is facing and come up with some new and different solution to that problem. So last week in the class we talked very much about the process of idea generation, and we did a little exercise around how we'd improve people's health and well-being. So what we could do in a creative process is go through an exercise where we look at coming up with sort of innovative creative solutions to the problem of health and well-being, and how we might solve people's health and well-being problems in new and different ways. And new ideas really eventuate from clever combinations of old knowledge recombined into new forms. So what creative people are doing is, again, looking at situations slightly differently, bringing a different lens to bear on a problem or a context or an issue, and they're coming up with a new or different solution to that problem that will enable them to take that idea forward into a tangible product for the organisation. And both creativity and innovation are driven by the notion of change. What we're trying to do in this process is to change what the organisation does and how the organisation approaches problems that face it in its organisational context. And these two go hand in actually coming up with solutions to the problems that we face in business, in society, and even in our own personal life. And when you look at the stuff around creative thinking, one of the themes that comes out of that is this very much this idea that sometimes we need to apply creativity to some of the issues we face in our own life. And really what we're doing in the process of innovation is trying to turn great ideas, creative ideas that we've come up with as an organisation, into a new source of competitive advantage for our organisation, and something that really adds and creates value for the customer. If we can do that as an organisation, we can find a way of actually channeling our ideas and to provide new and different solutions to the customer, then we're far more likely to come up with a product that the customer is actually going to want to buy and remain loyal to over time. So there's no doubt many organisations come up with potentially great ideas, but unless they can innovate in a strategic way, unless they can find a way of changing those ideas into a stream of new products for the market and find ways of creating new value for the customer, all of that creative effort is actually wasted. And again, this is probably one of the tensions that exist between purely creative acts and acts that are relevant to business, because in a purely creative sense, the act of creativity has intrinsic value in and of itself, even if it wasn't to produce a better product for a consumer. So by developing strategic approaches to innovation, and we've talked about strategic innovation earlier in the semester, what we're trying to do is to pull together the various building blocks of innovation, channel our creative efforts, and to be able to drive a range of new products that we can sell into a marketplace. And really what we're doing here is taking a holistic approach. Okay, so we're trying to interact between the creative part of the organisation, the research and development activities that the organisation undertakes, and trying to actually create a context within our business where people have the freedom and the space to challenge existing assumptions, to come up with new ideas and develop new products that will be of high value to consumers. And so what we have to do within an organisation who wants to engage in creativity and who wants to be able to generate new and innovative ideas is we really have to nurture creativity in the organisation. And there's a number of ways that we can actually do this. The first is we can actually ensure that there's a common language, that we understand what it is we're talking about when we're really talking about design and creativity. And so again, organisations that embrace design thinking as an approach to problem solving, they spend a lot of time up front actually trying to come up with a common set of meaning or understanding that everyone has in terms of how they want to in terms of how they are as an organisation actually going to solve problems. So they agree on consistent approaches, they agree on the types of creative activities that they'll engage in, and the way that they'll link those creative activities into the problem-solving process. We need to make sure we build a culture that values creativity. Again, often organisations don't like people thinking outside the box. They like to develop a culture that constricts and restrains the way that people behave. So if we're going to be good at innovation, if we're going to be good at entrepreneurship, then we really need to try and build a culture where innovation and entrepreneurship is actually supported, and where inspiration and ideation is something that's valued amongst our staff. Now again, there's a number of ways you can do this. You can do it informally. You can actually reward and commend people who come up with new ideas and processes, or you can do it more formally by actually creating space for your staff to have time during their work time to actually engage in creative processes. And again, a lot of leading innovative firms do this, where they actually give their staff a percentage of their work time to dedicate towards innovation and creative thinking. And by doing that, you're really formalising this process of innovation and saying this is a critical part of what we're trying to do. We also have to have really strong leadership. Leaders are critical in driving this common understanding of why entrepreneurship and innovative thinking is important, why it's important to engage in creativity. And leaders, again, are really critical in developing a supportive culture that rewards and nurtures those people who engage in the creative process. So by doing these things, we're able to ensure that we're able to achieve the best creative outcomes for our organisation. What I want to do in the next part of the lecture is I want to talk quickly about some of the different ways that we might go about generating new ideas.